Hello there. This is Aisha. I am your host for Black Girl from Eugene. And welcome to our little space. I am going to try to make this succinct. My goal is to create podcasts that are about 30 minutes or less. And if you've been listening to me, 30 minutes or less is like no lift at all. I can talk and talk and talk and talk to give my insight about many things for hours and hours and hours. So this is my challenge. First and foremost, as usual, I would love to welcome and thanks and give gratitude towards all of the Patreon supporters that I have and who are paying $5, $10 a month, $25 a month to support my production of this podcast. So please continue to do so. You really do make this happen. And anyone who would like to support the podcast at $5, $10, or $25, please see the connection in the link in show notes. It is through Patreon, Black Girl from Eugene _1/Patreon.com. But like I said, the link is in the show notes. All right, so let's get to it. Now, this is, a conversation that I have been having quite a bit, and I, there's so much to it. And it's really about diversity and listening to across the country, having this discourse of DEI being, this horrible, horrible thing. And like, what does it really do? And how do we really do this? The truth of it is that the definition has been centered really on just Black issues and LGBTQ issues. And the truth of the matter is that it's such a narrow vision of what DEI really is about. Now, if you are not a white man who is cisgendered, who is heteronormative, who is, wealthy or married, although you're not in that category, then diversity, equity, and inclusion would behoove you. It would benefit anything that you're trying to do. There literally is nothing that is in these United States, and I would even gesture globally, that suggests that there is diversity of thought, diversity of representation. There is diversity of perspective, and thought and perspective, cultural diversity has a lot to do with that. Ethnic diversity, religious diversity, gender diversity, sexuality diversity. Now, I don't know if that's necessary for your work. There shouldn't have a question about that anywhere, but there shouldn't be excluding that anywhere at all. Equity, no one is paid at the same rate as white cisgendered men. No one. So that is something to be considered. Inclusion, the idea that we have fallen from grace outside of what white men tell us is right is literally what's being fought right now. We have fallen out of the idea that white men who have money have the answers. Now, here we are with Donald Trump trying to fight back for office, which is absurd. But look at all of the grace. Look at all of the avoidance. Look at all of the just, hey, excuses of why this man exists with the integrity that he has and could have this much influence due to the money that he said that he had, not even technically having. We have now seen that Donald Trump doesn't have the money that he says that he has. Yet that does not slow his importance. It did not slow his grandeur to wanting, to appealing to 48% of this country that as a white man in all of his low integrity reaches to the most of the people who are not being heard, and they go, oh yeah, that's me. And we're talking about someone who, if you are Christian, and what's that, again, religious diversity, but if that's going to be what we're saying is the centerpiece of all morality in this country, which is exactly what's happening, tying church and state together, which is a norm now coming from the GOP with their excuses and their reasons for their hatred and bigotry tied right back to their Christianity, and then their own behavior not being held to that standard. So we're getting tired of that. So in DEI, understand that what is happening in those three letters is ensuring that anyone who is not cisgendered and male and white are being considered, being heard, and being attended to so that they can work in their desired fields without feeling the impact and squeeze of systemic inequalities, right? We are trying to address those inequalities, those inequities. That's it. And so when people just go, oh, DEI, and they immediately think Black people want my job, even the folks who are, and I'm air quoting anti-racist, don't understand that diversity does not mean more Black people necessarily, right? And I also want to remind you all, please remember that diversity is not the answer. The albeit answer. I want you to understand what I'm saying. So let me make that more clear. Because you have people who look different than you working at your workplace does not mean that you actually have those people represented culturally, ethnically, policy wise. You have people within your ranks who now look different. And now, if those people cannot be heard, seen, or qualified as changing, right, or as addressing the systemic issues within the workplace that are inequitable, it's not negotiable. It's systemic. We know it's inequitable, right? We know people are not being paid the same based on their ability to do the job. And so often, right? Often we say, oh, look, there's a brown person, there's a Black person, this place looks good. And I'm going to say 8.5 times out of 10, that Black person or that brown person either understands how to work in high proximity to whiteness, which means they keep their head down, they keep their voice low, or they are very comfortable with working next to white folks, and they just do what they're being asked to do. Same thing, right? Same thing. They may not have their head down, they may not have their voice low, but they sound just like the white cisgendered man in the position, and they will not vary from that. On top of it, you can have Black and brown people who are in those positions who are absolutely gatekeeping those positions, meaning that they believe that they have earned the right to be there. And so when they get there, they try to take as much from their proximity to whiteness and all the trauma that they have had to endure to get to that position and not allow anyone else to compete with them based on their race, because they understand that what white folks want is a brown face. They want a Black face. So there could be people who aren't even qualified that could get into that position. All of that is trauma, right? You can also have people who come in who are there as a token. They're the one Black person there. They have no power. They have no say in policy. They have no funding to support their position. They basically are there to hold that spot as the one Black person, or maybe two Black people. I would even go to 3 Black people that don't have any power in changing the way that the work is done, or the way that the work is represented, or the way that the communities in which the work reaches. They have no power over that. So you have to quite understand that, this is so complex, and it's so necessary to know more than the talking points, right? We have to understand practices. We have to understand processes, because just like the Texas legislative, what the hell happened? They're in Texas. A little boy was suspended from school because his locks were long. Now he kept them very well done. He went to the salon, and they were very neat, very beautiful, long, healthy locks. He would even wear them up as a gesture of like, okay, so that you don't want my hair long, that's fine. I can wear it up. Even Texas has passed the Crown Act, right? Which is law, literal law, that allows Black people's hair to grow out of their head naturally and not be discriminated against when they're being hired for a job or when they're going to school, and this is federal law, right? So the issue with this is, and the problem is, that they found a loop to get through the Crown Act so that they could still punish this boy, and then he eventually got kicked out, right? They found a loop and said, yeah, we have the Crown Act, but we're going to go ahead and do this other thing that kind of is not covered in the Crown Act. So those intentional practices that ensure that anti-Blackness is holds even through diversity, even through equity measures, even through inclusive measures. Anti-Blackness is pervasive. It actually targets through those regular and normalized practices of racism directly to the Black community, to itself and by itself. So that is what's interesting when you conflate DEI to Black. And that idea is that most laws are centered on stopping Black people from participating fully and from engaging fully, or from having access that's completely open, or having barriers completely removed. It focuses on that, but that's not the only people who are affected by these laws or by these practices. So what I'm trying to say is, as I'm doing my work, and you all, I think most of you know that I do public speaking quite a bit, an executive coach. So I talk about this all the time with organizations that are trying to convert from policies and practices that are traditionally and really just systemically racist. They're trying to convert into something that is more inclusive. Most of them understand what a pushback they're going to get when they do this, but they don't actually understand how deep everything needs to change in order to be successful at it. So that part is what I'm addressing. Is it's a simple idea of that everything that you do that you believe is anti-racist, there is not one action. Everything is interconnected because it's systemic. The systemic piece of racism is what is most difficult for people to understand. It is in everything that we do designed to maintain white supremacy for cisgendered white men. So I hope that resonates for you, that if you see one piece of it, you kind of have to follow the rabbit trail. I think that's what they call it, or follow the trail back, and you'll find every single piece all the way down to the hiring practice is racist, right? Or is inequitable, or is not inclusive in one way or the other. So when someone wants to say they're doing this work, the question about how you're doing the work is always like the third question down. People are most impressed with the fact that you can now say something that's not anti-racist. You've read the books, you've got the words, right? The problem is you don't have the practice. And for white folks out there who want to immediately assert that they are not racist, we have to quite understand that it's at this point, it's not about what you're saying, it's about what you're doing. Okay. So the doing part is the insistence on having answers of how the process and policy plays out for who you work with and who is involved around you. Again, it's not always about Black and Brown people. If you start with Black and Brown people, you will fix the problem in its entirety, right? But what I'm saying for folks who struggle with the idea of why DEI is not just about Black people, I want you to quite understand, look at it in a holistic manner and recognize in that space where the anti-Blackness is, because that's pervasive in that whole process. But DEI in itself is inclusive of everyone who is literally just not cisgendered white male. And it's not for cisgendered white men who are heteronormative listening to my podcast, it is not to exclude you. It is to decenter you, right? There's nothing in this world that requires you to be at the center of the solution or the center of any piece of how someone behaves, shows up, breathes, interacts with you at all. Your needs and your ability to be in everything and in the purpose and the drive for everything else after that is what is problematic. And so without everyone else's voices involved, that lends to your supremacy. And the supremacy is not something that's earned, right? This is not something that we can go back to and say, this is why white cisgendered heteronormative men should be leading or ruling or making decisions for literally anyone else, right? We actually cannot go back in history and find the reason why that group in particular has any other attribute that would make them better or more suited to do anything other than anyone else. There's no evidence of that, right? I will say, we can talk about war and that. And even then, it wasn't white cisgendered men who perfected that piece either. So, we just have to get back to what's real and what's true for the community at large, for a society at large, for the global majority, because that's what we're faced against. That's what we're faced with right now is truth and moral compass, moral integrity in that truth. Everyone knows what the reason is, kind of, right? And no one really even wants to blame anybody. We just want to fix it, right? We just want to get it to the point where people can stop unaliving themselves because of the intense hatred that they're feeling by their coworkers or by their boss or by people they go grocery shopping with, right? We want to just like slow that down, nothing too crazy. So that's my little spiel for today. Look back, look down the processes, look down what seems to be normal, and ask yourself, how normal is it for everyone? How normal is it for you? If you were to unpack white supremacy from your identity, and that goes for anybody, that does not have a race attached to it, right? There's more to the conversation, but I'm trying to keep my promise and keeping it short. I will be back again next week. Please, subscribe to the podcast, give it a 5. And that way we can boost it to the top so people can really start to understand and listen to what life is like in high proximity to whiteness as a Black woman in this world. I love to share my knowledge with you all. I love to share my lived experiences with you. I love to share my professional experiences with you. If anyone has questions or comments, please leave them. I would love to hear what you have to say. If anyone would like to book me for public speaking, please reach out and I'd be happy to set a meeting and talk to you about that. All right, enjoy yourself, enjoy each other. And if you can't do anything else in that day, just don't mess it up for anybody else. Just give love and kindness and empathy for yourself and for everyone around you. All right, peace.